I first would like to introduce our three guests, Tyrique Gopaul, Tevon Blair, and Dylan Sellers. Tyrique is currently a congressional intern, a self-proclaimed future politician, senator specifically, that we're very excited to hear from. And we have with us Tevon and Dylan. Tevon specifically works with Vote HBCU, and we'll ask Tevon to kind of tell us how to pronounce ex-leader, but either way, it's a very important part of what's been going on. And then, of course, we have with the Fair Election Center with us here today, Dylan Sellers. So welcome, guests.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So my first question is going to be about, well, let's hear how do you pronounce ex-leader, and tell us a little bit about what you guys are doing and the Vote HBCU initiative.
The way that I explain to people, we are excelling leaders. And so Excel Leader, we are a community of HBCU alumni who built leaders, impact HBCUs, and change the world. And so I'm a proud graduate of Dillard University in New Orleans, Louisiana. And we kicked off Vote HBCU back in 2020 when everyone was trying to find a way to engage HBCU students. What better way to do that than have HBCU alumni do that work? And so we kicked off the first ever convening of HBCU students to talk about civic engagement on a virtual platform. And so since 2020, we've been engaging with students. And so we've been on our Vote HBCU tours. We started our tours in 2021 and have been doing them since then. And so this year we went to a 10-stop tour. The goal is to help educate, mobilize, and empower HBCU students to be informed voters. Our work is nonpartisan, so it's important to give HBCUs the option to make that decision for themselves, but then also ensure they have the resources to be informed and be educated about the decisions they make. Jada, we can't hear you.
My apologies. So one of the things that you guys do is the Say It Louder tour, the 10-stop tour to different HBCUs. Can you tell us a little bit about what that process has been like and the mission behind it?
Yeah, so this was actually the very first year that we did 10 schools. At first, it's always has been 1 or 2 schools per year. And this year we finished off our stop at Grambling back in the fall of 2023. And we realized the impact. We merged HBCU culture with civics on campuses. And so Grambling really showed us the importance and need. And they said a lot of organizations don't come out here to Ruston, Louisiana, to ensure that we are educated not only on the national elections, but the local and state levels. And so this year we decided to do 10 schools with HBCUs located in Washington, D.C., Virginia, Alabama, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida. And so we had 10 students representing each of those HBCUs. They were paid fellows. They traveled to Atlanta this summer for our summit to be trained, understand what the importance of disinformation, misinformation, how to really describe what that is, and then what policy, how policy works, but also how to register students to vote. And so all of the students we had in our program, we had about 159 students to apply for the fellowship. We selected 10 students, and those students have been very pivotal in the work that we do. And so we tell the students that to be an HBCU student means to be a civically engaged student. And so that is the entire premise of making Vote HBCU not only part of the 2024 cycle, but a yearly initiative that HBCUs understand that once students are enrolled on campus, they are part of that community. They should have the option to be registered in the community where they learn. And so the tour has shown us that. We were able to register 859 students to vote, and we're excited to see what that engagement looks like on Election Day.
Wonderful. So to that point, I do want to throw some questions. We have HBCU graduates, and myself included, in the conversation today. So Tyrique and Dylan, can you tell us a little bit, coming off of Tevon's point, how, even in your experience, Tyrique, with your HBCU, and how it's kind of forwarded you into your own mission with political activism, and Dylan as HBCU director for the Fair Election Center, what can you kind of pick up from what Tevon said that matches the importance of engaging HBCUs in politics?
Thank you for that question. Well, attending at HBCU, specifically Virginia State University, the illustrious Virginia State University, it deeply shaped my relationship and perspective of politics by grounding me in a community that places a strong emphasis on history, identity, and activism. HBCUs are spaces that highlight the intersections of race, class, and culture, and being in that environment made me more aware of the importance of advocating for marginalized communities It really just strengthened my beliefs in politics, that it's not just about policies. It's really about fighting for equality, justice, and representation for people that have been historically silenced for a very long time. And just being at Virginia State University, I was exposed to like a long legacy of Black leaders and change makers, which inspired me to think critically about how I would contribute to that tradition. And it also made me understand that my identity, being young, Black, and queer, it carries weight in political spaces and where people like me aren't always seen. And that sense of responsibility has driven my desire to push for systematic change and to use politics as a tool for greater inclusion and progress.
That's fantastic. I'm delighted to be on this call. As you said, I'm the National HBCU Director for Fair Election Center. Actually, XL Leader is one of our stronger partners, and I like to say that like we complement each other well because the kind of work the Fair Election Center does is identify barriers for institutional engagement. We run a program called the Legacy Initiative. We work with 40 different HBCUs across 10 different states, and our whole goal is to support those HBCUs in doing the work that they are historically have already done or are already engaged in. And we work specifically with the administrators. And so trying to support the institution and creating the culture and doing the things that they need to do to allow for the students that like Tevon is working with to excel in the space of learning how to use their voice, how to engage in the process, allowing a space for them to be excited about what it means to be young, Black, and involved, right? And what responsibility that holds when you're coming from an HBCU as a young Black student, making sure that your voice is not only heard, but acknowledged and acted upon. And so at Fair Election Center, we do a democracy fellowship program. We work with administrators, as I said before, to cultivate those relationships, to do the necessary research, and to eliminate silos. And so making sure that HBCUs in North Carolina are talking to HBCUs in Louisiana, the people who are doing the work, because it's an act of love that these administrators are doing to make sure, because it's not always easy work to do and it's not always safe work to do, but they do it and they do it well, and we try to do our best to highlight them when we see it.
Thank you. And I love one thing that you said specifically, Dylan, about being young, Black, and involved. And, you know, those are two target populations who have been huge in this election, the Black vote as well as the young vote. So I want to segue into that with talking about, you know, what are we seeing? And this is a question for all of the panelists. What are we seeing with these ballot initiatives that Gen Z specifically is having a really big part in? And why are these issues so prevalent now in this upcoming election for that generation?
You got to keep in mind the type of voters that Gen Z students are. This is a generation of students who have experienced global pandemics, the gun law situations happening in their schools, economic crisis. Like, they've seen it all, and so they have been in a space where they could not vote. A lot of them are now 18, or the first election they're able to participate in. And so when you've experienced from elementary school all the way in high school and now being a college student, you want to. That's why our tour is called the Say It Louder tour, because they are saying it louder. They are engaged. They have more access to digital tools and platforms to really describe what is going on across their communities. So people may think these are like newly engaged students, but this is fuel. They've been thinking about this and wanting to make that voice heard for years. And that's why it's so fired up and they're ready to turn out.
Yeah, I think that the other part of that is, and Tevon mentioned this, but I want to add the part that they lived through COVID, right? And so they watched as this nation showed itself true to how they treat Black people, right? And so this is a generation who is not waiting for things to get better. They want things to get better, and they don't see a reason why it can't get better now. And so it's a very exciting thing to watch these students across the country, particularly with the opportunity to vote for a person who attended an HBCU. It's the first time in history that you have an HBCU grad at the top of a ticket, regardless of how you want to vote or how you're going to do that. Fair Election Center is nonpartisan in the strictest sense of the term. Howsoever, it is a historical moment And it is not lost on these Gen Z students or what the opportunity is that's set before them.
Yes, thank you so much. I think another ballot discussion that's very important. I think it just comes to student debt reform. I think a lot of us being in Gen Z, I myself included, I'm first generation. My parents didn't even graduate high school, so I'm literally like the first person to even like get an education, and I just got my master's. And I think it just goes back to the fact that thank you, proud valedictorian of Georgetown University also. So yes,
Yes,
Say that, sir. Say
Black
that.
excellence bearing the lead.
thank you. But student debt reform is just one of the greatest things that I'm just really just passionate about. I feel like everyone should have access to a college education. Granted, in this society, I do understand that some people may feel this type of way, but graduating high school is just literally becoming the bare minimum. And a college degree just opens up so much more doors for you, and it just teaches you so much more things. And I do believe that because of this past administration, college has become a lot more accessible for people like us that are just up and coming in today's market. And I'm so appreciative of that.
Thank you all so much for your answers. And for my last question, I want to talk about, both campaigns. We've seen with the Harris campaign as well as with the Trump campaign, different approaches to this demographic, Black young voters, or even just youth voters in general. So with what we've seen with the different rallies, with the different social media advocacy, how do you think it's been harmful or helpful to that community, in particular with Black men? Because, that's also been a pivotal conversation in terms of voting for Kamala Harris. Do Black men feel like she's offering them enough, that she's standing for what they need? So what do you guys think?
Jada, you trying to get me in trouble?
I
gotta. Fair Election Center is nonpartisan in the strictest sense of the term.
Yes.
Howsoever, I will say the excitement that I'm seeing from HBCU students has been something that I haven't seen for a while. I've been doing this kind of work my entire adult life. So over 10, approaching 15 years, don't ask me my age, but I've seen quite a few of these elections, and to see the kind of excitement that I'm seeing, and it's issue based, right? And so it's less really about the candidates. It's less about Donald Trump and what he's doing, less about Kamala Harris and what she's doing, even though it's a historical thing. Where do these people stand on the issues that I care about? And that's what these students want to know, and that's what they're voting about. And I think that has been, to the degree that they have been clear about those things, has been helpful.
I think when it comes to messaging, that is the really key thing. So I'm a communications professional, and I understand tactics. I understand when I see from both parties of the message they're trying to come across to specifically young Black voters, especially Black men. And so it comes with a level of intention, but it's also that blurred line of what is accurate and factual information versus what is dis and misinformation. And when people are educated, they make informed decisions. And so what I'm noticing is that people are sharing partial information where it's like, this is somewhat factual, but the way you're telling that story, the narrative that you're framing it in, that is completely incorrect in how people understand how policy works, how, like, for example, the job of the vice president, understanding what that is tasked with. And so it's a really important for organizations like all of us on this call, but also as just people in communities, is having conversations. Don't talk at students, allow them to figure out what issues they care about and allow them to make their own decisions. But what we've noticed with the young people and like how they understand messages, it comes so fast on social media. So sometimes they may see something they want to comment on, or they want to reshare it, and not knowing you're sharing a piece of misinformation. And when somebody brings you something factual, they're saying, but I saw it on this news platform. And it's like, let's check 3 before you share it out. So they're excited. It's something that we've never seen before, but it's history that is, these young people are a part of that. They come from leaders, from HBCUs, knowing that is the walk of life that we come from our alumni, and these students have the same access to resources to make that change happen.
Yes, and I do appreciate, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I do appreciate you for that response. I think it also just comes to being someone that literally is the first person, even in his entire family, to even like walk across a graduation stage. I think it just comes with meeting people where they are. I think representation shows. I think you really should be actively going to these communities and interacting with people that look like you and are from the same exact communities, because it's oftentimes saying like, yeah, we could be the same skin color, but we ain't never walked the same path in a sense. And I think it just really comes with being intentional with who's showing up in these spaces, and how exactly are we taking up space and making it more equitable, so the line of continuation in the pipeline could continue to go on further.
Thank you all so much for joining me today. Thank you all for your responses, for the work that you're doing with your respective organizations and positions. You spoke about some very important topics, and I hope it's given not only Gen Z voters, but Black voters a lot to think about and consider in the coming weeks. So thank you so much, gentlemen, for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.